Hi, my name is Trevor Taji, and I will be informing you guys about the isolated country of North Korea. Now, I know what you guys all think that we don't know what goes on behind North Korea, but in truth, we do have enough information to know what is probably going on. So, today I will be talking about the three things: the history of North Korea, the way of life in North Korea, and the political views of North Korea. Now, the history of North Korea. In 1910, Japan colonized the Korean peninsula. This was known as a time of brutal experience for the Korean civilians, and to this day it still haunts the two countries. In 1945, at the end of World War II, Japan lost its longtime reign of the Korean peninsula. So then in 1945, the Korean peninsula was split up between the northern Soviet Union and the southern United States. The two were separated by the 38th parallel. It was supposed to be temporary, but then the Cold War halted that. In 1948, the Soviet Union and the United States handed over their portions of the Crimean Peninsula. The Soviet Union gave theirs to Kim Il-sung, and the United States gave theirs to Syngman Rhee. Then, later in 1948, Pyongyang became the capital of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. 2 years later, in 1950, the war between the two areas of Korea started. Kim Il-sung wanted all of Korea, so he tried to do that through military force. This became the most destructive time in the Korean history, seeing 10% of its population vanish and leaving Pyongyang in ruins. In 1953, the war ended with the signing of the armistice that ended any hostilities between the two areas. The Demilitarized Zone DMZ was established to separate the two countries. This was similar to the 38th parallel, but it separated the Korean families that were on opposite sides of the borders. Between the times of 1953 and the 1970s, North Korea was said to be a successful state in the world. They were even better off than the South Koreans. During this time, North Korea took control of everything in the country, including all private property and organizations. The capital Pyongyang became a socialist city and had monuments all over of Kim Il-sung. They also took control of all media and restricted international travel. Then became the creation of the Songbun system. Everyone was born into a social class based on their loyalty to socialism and the regime. A person's Songbun class would determine how their life would go, including telling them where they would go to school, what occupation they would be, and where they would live. If you weren't considered loyal, you'd be sent to the outskirts of North Korea, which happened to about 1/4 of the population. In 1994, Kim Il-sung died, and his son, Kim Jong-il, took over the country. At this time, North Korea was going through an economic crisis. They were going through a period of famine. During the 2000s, Kim Jong-il knew that the country needed help. So their friends, the South Koreans, offered 50,000 jobs to North Korean civilians. And also China helped by sending goods and services to the country. In 2011, Kim Jong-il passed away, so his son Kim Jong-un took over. This was a time of worriness for the North Korean civilians because they had little to know about their new leader. They didn't even know when he was born, if it was in 1983 or 1984. Now we will move on to what it's like to live in North Korea. Since it is so isolated, it is hard to know every detail that happens in the country, but what we do know about their lifestyle is from people that have lived it or seen it. For civilians living in the capital, Pyongyang, it is considered a better lifestyle than living in the countryside. You have to be invited to live in the capital city. This is for the people that are the most loyal to the country. They even have the roads blocked so that people from the outside can't get in. Now, the talk about Koreans not having electronics like laptops and phones or cameras is false. It's just that it's so expensive and most of the people don't have the money for it. The ones that do are the ones that are the most loyal and they are trusted. Now, there is not very much transportation in the country of North Korea, so it remains pretty quiet. Now, this is unusual for the capital with a population of 3 million, but they don't have restaurants, coffee shops, retail stores, etc. It's mostly just apartment buildings. The life as a kid in Pyongyang is just like anywhere else. They go to school, and then after school they go to a place called the Children's Palace, where they learn dancing, singing, and gymnastics. Now, the lifestyle in rural North Korea is quite different than in the city. Now, these are the people that live in the most poverty, and there is no sight of any cars or machinery, which means all the work is done by manual labor. The only thing that you can see are statues and sayings of the past and current North Korean leaders. Now the role of men, women, and children in rural North Korea. The men go hunting mostly for pigs to bring home for food for the family. The women are in the fields gathering rice, and the kids are carrying sacks of rice that the women have gathered back home for meals later on. The streets in rural Korea have military personnel watching every move to make sure that the civilians are working and not trying to flee the country. Even though some of the things that have been said might seem a little harsh, North Koreans are still seen singing, dancing, and visiting sporting events. Now, there is still a bunch that we don't know about North Korea, but this is what we do know of. Now the North Korean government rules and regulations. Since 1948, they have been governed under the Workers' Party of Korea, which is said to be a socialistic state under a totalitarian dictatorship that resulted from the Soviet Union rule. The North Korean rulership is passed down between a family, but there is an election every 5 years for the citizens to vote, but there's always only one person on the ballot. Some unique changes that the Kim family have made are that they have their own time zone, which is the Pyongyang time zone, and they have their own calendar based off the birth date of their first leader, Kim Il-sung, which is 1912, meaning that as of 2019, this is the 108th year of the Korean calendar. 3 ways to be handed the death penalty in North Korea is by distributing pornography, watching any South Korean show, and possessing any Bible. And this also goes by the 3-generation rule, which means the next 3 generations face the same punishment. North Korea thrives on their military, with the largest military personnel and the 4th largest active duty personnel. So wrapping it up, with such an isolated country, it is hard to know everything that goes on, but we do know enough to know what goes on about the history of North Korea, the lifestyle, and the government. North Korea has been on the rise in the last decade, so it will be interesting to see what the future holds. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you know a little bit more about the country of North Korea.